Hi, my name is Cameron Knight, the author of the article that you are hopefully reading. Today we're going to take a look at the post-production of one of the images that I showed you throughout the tutorial. So this is the image I chose, just one of my favorite images. I think it really kind of conveys the whole theme of the image, the message of the shoot. So we're going to do several things to this image. The first thing we're going to do is crop it. The next thing we're going to do is touch the background a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that yet, but we're going to change the background to a little bit darker tone. I don't really like how it's brighter on the edges than it is in the center, so I'm going to try to match the outside tone of the background to the inside tone that's here, this dark area. The last thing we're going to do is just touch up the general tones of the image a little bit. I want to make this red a little bit better. I maybe want to warm up the image a little bit more than it already is. We already talked about that in the white balance section. And the last thing I want to do is to bring in some detail in this area right here of the barrel of the gun. I want to try to make that stand out a little bit better because it kind of blends into her shirt a little bit. I don't mind the shirt being dark, but I want it to stand out against it just a little bit. And I think there's just enough detail to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and do a crop first. Your crop tool, if you're not familiar with it, is over here. So we're going to, this is how I crop. I always crop the same way. I've cropped the same way for forever. The thing that really bothers me about the image that we're looking at is this electrical conduit that runs through the bottom of the frame. It's basically a metal pipe that's nailed to the wall. It was in like every single shot I made during this, and it was really frustrating to try to get out of the shot. I tried to even like embrace it at one point and utilize it to create lines, and it just didn't work. It was really super frustrating, so I'm just going to crop it out. Come up to right about there. That's just about enough headroom. In the center here, you'll see a crosshairs. That's where the center of your image is. If I move that's about to the middle of her chest, that'll probably be good. I also want to watch the gap on the side here between her arms. I want that to be at least similar to add some symmetry to the image. Double click to confirm the crop. The next thing we're going to do is a levels adjustment. That's Command L. I'm going to move the whites up just a little bit to make sure I have a pure white. Not all the way to the start of the curve, but just almost to it. The next thing I'm going to do is drop the blacks down. This is going to help correct some of that gray problem that we're having. The only place I'm worried about losing black detail is in the top of her hair right here. Losing detail here is not that big of a deal. Losing detail in the gun, I can always bring that back with a history brush. And same thing with the hair, so I'm not too worried about losing details in a bunch of the black areas or anything. Bring the midtones up just a touch, not even very much at all. Okay, so I hit enter and confirmed that levels adjustment. So if we look at that now, it just adds some contrast and pop to the image. So that's the difference between the two. That's just what levels does. Levels is a really powerful tool. A lot of people like to use curves. I like to use levels. So the next thing I want to do is worry about the background. So I'm going to use the burn tool. I'm going to use a really big brush. Select the midtones. Up here is your burn tool options. You've got midtones and you've got your exposure percentage. I'm at 15%. Midtones about a 700 and whatever 50 pixel brush. So now I'm just going to try to bring down the outside edges of the frame a little bit. The great thing about the burn tool is when you select midtones, as I have, it does isolate and not burn in things that are highlights or shadows. So I don't have to worry about screwing up too bad. I'm going to redo that stroke there. Just undid that and I'm going to do it again. I don't mind it looking a little mottled, a little scattered or anything, but I want it to look pretty consistent. I don't want it to look burned or anything. So it's a little bit better. I'm going to do a couple more little burn strokes here with a smaller brush, so I can eliminate the halo effect that's around her right now. Right here and right here are some areas that weren't affected by the burn tool as much. So I just want to come in here and knock those down a little bit. It's too much of an exposure on that one, and maybe too small of a brush. So it's pretty good. So we'll go and check out the burns before the burn, after the burn. Do that again just to let you see it. It's pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is get these reds popped out a little bit. So I'm going to open up a HueSaturation. That's Command U. I'm going to select the reds and actually come over here and do an eyedropper to get the exact area of the reds I'm going to be adjusting. The issue here is that some of these red tones are also going to be in her skin. So the first thing I do whenever I do a HueSaturation adjustment, one of these isolated ones where you're isolating a color, is I crank up the saturation all the way to see where it's affecting. So you can see here that there's a lot of red tones throughout the entire image. So in her hair, in her face, through all of her skin. So in order to avoid that, what I'm going to do is a very loose selection. I'm going to use the lasso tool. See the lasso tool there? I'm going to use the lasso tool in a big feather, probably 150 feather. Your feather option is right up there in the version of Photoshop that I'm using. And I'm just going to do a very, very loose feather around the area I'm trying to affect. I'm holding down Shift to select two areas at the same time. So that's a very loose feather. It's totally okay to have a loose feather like that. We're just trying to bump them up a little bit. So I'm going to go back into HueSaturation. And now that I'm selected, I don't need to worry about selecting a color because I'm already selected on the area I want to work with. I'm just going to bump up the saturation just a little bit. I'm also going to take the hue, and it's actually, this red is actually toward the orangey yellow side of the spectrum. So what I want to try to do is bring that back to the red side of the spectrum by shifting the hue a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. And then I want to touch the darkness just to see what it looks like. So I'm going to bring the darkness down and then up just to see. I think it looks pretty good right in the middle. So I'm going to hit OK on that. Deselect. So now we can check out the difference between our hue and saturation adjustments. Not a huge difference, but I think it looks pretty good. Looks better anyways. Now I'm going to try to apply a photo filter just to see what a warming filter looks like. The way that I do this is I, again, crank it up all the way to really see what the where it's affecting everything. And then bring it up. This helps me not overdo it. When I go too far, I get to see what the overdone look looks like. So I think about 30% looks pretty good. So now I'll show you the difference between these two just by using the preview button. So no warming, warming applied, no warming, warming applied. The next thing I want to do is bring out the detail of the actual rifle here, or the gun here. The top of her hair that I was worried about earlier still has plenty of detail in it. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to come in here and try to bring out some of that detail. And the way that I'm going to do that is you can see the middle, there's this little bit of a different kind of texture in the middle of the gun all the way up. So what I'm going to try first is just a lasso selection and a little bit of a levels adjustment. So I'm going to change my feather to about 30. I'm going to come down. It doesn't have to be exact again. You're working with something that's pretty solid tone. maybe select this here again, just get all the way down to the bottom. And now what I can do is I can bring it all the way up to see what detail I can bring out. So there's a little bit of detail in there. So I'm just going to bring that out just a little bit. It's pretty good. I don't think I messed with any other part of the image. So let's check that out in full screen. So if I go from photo filter to levels, you can see that it brought in a lot of detail into the very top of the gun up here, and then down into here there's a nice line to separate out the separate out the barrel from the rest of everything else. Okay, so that's done. The final thing I'm going to do is just zoom in on everything to make sure there's no spots or weird marks or anything. There's a lot of spots up here. Those are on the wall. That's not like in my camera or anything. So I can't really do too much about that. So I'm just going to leave it be, let it be a little bit of a rough image to add to the rough look of everything. But I do want to check out her face. Make sure there's no really crazy weird straight hairs. I think they all look pretty good. Come down here, arms. Just make sure there's no dust spots or anything. And the very last thing I want to do is zoom in right on the eye. Do a nice 10 pixel feather on a lasso tool again. Come in right to the very center of the eye there. Get myself a little bit wider around the edges. A little bit brighter in the middle with the midtones. Say okay to that. Come into HueSaturation. Bump up the saturation a little bit. I'm actually pulling out a lot of red in her eye, as you can see, around the white of the eye. So what I'm going to do is do a selection of probably cyans to get that color, whatever that color is, right in the middle of her eye. It says it's yellows, which is a little bit surprising, but we'll see what it looks like. So that's actually not too much of a change, so I'm not even going to worry about that. I want to come over here and check her other eye to make sure that it is actually not, so there's not a lot of difference between her two eyes. This eye is in complete shadow, more or less, so I'm not too worried about it. I do like that little catch light there. I'm going to lasso that. Not too much feather. I'm just going to lasso. Eliminate my feather to 0. Select it again. There we go, that's better. Okay, so now we've got that popped, we've got our eye worked on, so let's zoom out again. We'll give you just a look at her head here, and then we'll go back and forth from, I think, right about here. Yep, so we'll go, there's the effect on, so there's just the effect of what I did. Brightens her eye just a touch and brings that catch light out on the other side just a little bit, just to bring out the eyes. The eyes are the most important part of any portrait, as you probably know. So here we go. So we've got the nice image here. We've got the background burned in. There's obviously a lot more you could do this image if you wanted to. This is just a quick edit. I just wanted to show how I would have done it just as a normal kind of basic edit with no crazy effects or anything. Just kind of correcting the problems that I saw. So if we go to here, we can go back to the open area here. That's what it looked like originally. And we go here and you can see the final image. A little bit of burning, a little bit of warming, some spot detailing, and it looks like it's good to go. So thanks for following along with me today for this editing process. I hope this helps you in your editing if you come across an image like this, or maybe get some techniques from this that you can use in your images. Thanks so much. Have a great day.